The Pacific Ocean was burning, not with fire, but with war. By 1943, Japan's imperial air power dominated huge stretches of the Pacific sky. Their pilots were veterans, killers, and legends. Their Zero fighters danced through the air with unmatched grace, striking fear into anyone who dared challenge them. But then, the Americans brought something new, something Japan did not expect. A twin-engine monster that looked too big to dogfight, too heavy to maneuver, too strange to be feared. But hidden inside its wings was a weapon so advanced, so lethal, that it changed the rules of aerial warfare. A weapon Japan would only understand when it was already too late. This is the story of the shell that turned the Lockheed P-38 Lightning into a long-range aerial executioner, allowing it to kill from miles away. A shell Japan learned to fear bitterly and painfully. Hook, grabbing the viewer. Imagine this: a Japanese formation of Zero fighters cruising at 20,000 feet. Confident, relaxed, unaware. 2 miles behind them. No one sees the glint of metal. No one senses death approaching. The P-38 pilot squeezes the trigger. A single 20mm shell leaves the cannon. It travels straight, steady, and fast, like a silent messenger of destruction. 4 seconds later, boom! The lead Zero explodes into fire. No dogfight, no warning, just instant death. The Japanese formation panics, because this was not normal. No American fighter could do this. None of them could kill from this distance. None of them had this accuracy. But the P-38 could, and the reason was a small, deadly piece of engineering that turned the Lightning into a sniper of the skies. Story begins. The weapon that changed everything. To understand how the P-38 achieved this terrifying long-range ability, we need to start at the place where all great war innovations begin. A problem. A very big problem. By late 1942, American fighters struggled in long-range battles over the Pacific. Dogfighting skilled Japanese pilots was dangerous, but even reaching the enemy was harder. Most U.S. fighters, P-40, P-39, even early P-47s, lacked the range and punch needed to fight deep in enemy territory. But the P-38 Lightning was different. Twin engines, long range, high speed, deadly climb rate, and most importantly, all its guns were in the nose. No wing-mounted spread, no convergence issues, just pure precise fire focused like a laser. But even with all that, something was still missing. The Americans needed a shell capable of punching through Japanese aircraft at distances never attempted before. A shell that didn't lose accuracy. A shell that didn't tumble at long range. A shell that didn't explode too early. They needed a shell that would fly almost perfectly straight and then kill instantly. So the engineers at Hispano Suiza delivered a miracle. The M2 20mm high-explosive incendiary shell. This was not just ammunition. This was a new philosophy of air combat. The shell that changed air combat. The new 20mm shell developed for the P-38s. Hispano cannon wasn't just another bullet. It was a piece of science designed specifically for one purpose: kill with certainty, even at extreme range. Most World War II aircraft guns relied on volume. Spray enough lead, hope something hits. But the P-38's new shell wasn't about luck. It was about precision. Here is what made it terrifying for Japanese pilots. A shell that stayed deadly at long range. At distances where 50 caliber bullets slowed down and became weak, this shell was still traveling fast, very fast. It didn't wobble. It didn't lose energy quickly. It didn't fall off target like most shells did. Inside the gun, it fired at over 2,800 feet per second. And because it was heavier than machine gun rounds, it held that speed longer. For the enemy, that meant one thing. If the P-38 pilot could see you, he could hit you, even from miles away. High explosive incendiary core. This shell wasn't meant to poke holes. It was meant to detonate. Inside was a high explosive charge, an incendiary compound, a sensitive fuse that ignited on impact. When it hit a Japanese Zero, an aircraft built with light aluminum, thin skin, no armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks, the result was always the same. Instant fireball. Even a single hit could rip the aircraft apart. And at long range, Japanese pilots couldn't even tell where the fire came from. No convergence block and sniper accuracy. Every other American fighter, P-40, P-47, P-51, had machine guns in the wings. That meant their bullets crossed paths at a certain convergence distance. Too close or too far from that point, your shots missed. The P-38 Lightning had everything in the nose. Mike Cannon, 4.50 caliber machine guns. all pointing straight forward, all firing in a tight, deadly stream. At 1,000 feet, every round was still in a fist-sized pattern. At 2,000 feet, the shots stayed together. At 3,000 feet, the cannon shell still hit exactly where the pilot aimed. So when the Lightning fired its 20mm shell, it wasn't a scatter shot. It was a sniper round, and combined with the P-38's stability, the shell became the most accurate long-range killer in the sky. Japanese pilots had no defense. The Zero was fast and agile, but it had one fatal weakness. It was fragile. A single explosive shell could ignite the fuel, break a wing spar, knock the engine off, or literally blow the cockpit apart. Japanese pilots relied on close-in turning battles. They never expected a fighter to kill them from so far away that they couldn't even see the shooter. And that is exactly what started happening. One by one, Zeros began falling out of the sky, destroyed by a weapon they couldn't understand. Japan's first encounter with the invisible killer. By early 1943, American intelligence started receiving strange reports from Japanese radio traffic. Zero pilots were panicking. They were describing something impossible. Aircraft exploding without warning, killed by an enemy they never saw. At first, Japanese commanders refused to believe it. A twin-engine American fighter, the P-38 Lightning, was considered too heavy, too clumsy, too slow to dogfight a Zero. But what Japan believed was about to be shattered in the most violent way possible. The ambush over the Bismarck Sea. On March 3, 1943, a major Japanese convoy attempted to reinforce New Guinea. 8 transport ships, 8 destroyers, and dozens of fighters were covering them. Japan thought they were safe, but high above the clouds, a formation of P-38 Lightning stalked them like hunting wolves. These American pilots had been briefed. Engage from distance. Use the cannon. Don't dogfight the Zeros. Kill before they know you're there. The Japanese air patrol was flying relaxed, just as they always did over friendly forces. But then, the sky exploded. A Zero leading the formation suddenly burst into flames. No tracers were seen. No engine roar was heard. Just a fireball drifting down toward the sea. The Japanese wingman yelled into his radio, "Teki wa doko da?" Where is the enemy? The Americans were still too far to be spotted. The P-38 pilots watched calmly as their cannon shells tore into the formation from over a mile away. Another Zero disintegrated. A third lost its wing. A fourth spiraled into the clouds, trailing black smoke. And only then, only when their comrades were already dead, did the remaining Japanese pilots finally see the twin tails of death slicing through the sun. But by then it was too late. The shell proved its power. The after-action reports were shocking. Most kills occurred from 1,500 to 4,000 feet. One Lightning pilot reported a kill from nearly 1 mile. Every hit with the 20mm cannon resulted in instant destruction. The Americans realized something. They didn't need to turn with the Zero. They just needed to shoot it before it got close. This became the P-38's new doctrine. And Japan, for the first time, felt fear of a fighter that didn't play by the rules of dogfighting. The Zero's greatest weakness exposed. The A6M-0 was unmatched in agility, but its lightweight construction was its downfall. The P-38's explosive shells ripped through it every single time because no armor protected the pilot, no protection shielded the fuel tanks. The wings cracked easily under explosive impact. The body was made of extremely light alloys. The Zero was designed for speed and maneuverability, but not for surviving a 20mm high-explosive cannon hit. Every encounter proved the same. If a P-38 got even one solid shell on target, the Zero didn't survive. Japanese pilots began calling the Lightning Shinen no Oni, the demon from the abyss, because it struck from unseen distances. A new kind of air warfare. Before the P-38's range-killing shells, air fights were simple. Dogfight, turn, outmaneuver your enemy. But the Lightning changed everything. It removed the dogfight entirely. This was the first time in aviation history that a frontline fighter could fire accurately beyond visual distance, snipe enemy aircraft before merging, destroy fighters without ever engaging in a turning battle. This was not just a new weapon. This was a new era, the mission that shook Japan's high command. By mid-1943, Japan was finally beginning to understand that something was very wrong. Their pilots were among the most experienced in the world. They trained for years. They mastered aerobatics. They practiced turn fighting every day. But now, they were dying before they even entered a dogfight. Japan kept asking the same question. How are the Americans killing us from so far away? The answer arrived brutally, during one of the most legendary missions flown by the P-38 Lightning. The assassination of Admiral Yamamoto. April 18, 1943, Bougainville, Solomon Islands. Japan's most respected military figure, the architect of Pearl Harbor himself, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, was scheduled to fly to WWII Island. American codebreakers intercepted the plan. A secret order was sent. Intercept and destroy Yamamoto's aircraft. The mission was given to the only fighter that could travel the extreme distance and still fight effectively. The P-38 Lightning. 18 P-38s took off. 300 miles over open ocean. No navigation beacons. No return support. One mistake meant death. They flew at wave-top level to avoid radar. Hours passed. Fuel burned. Silence dominated the cockpit. Then, a glint in the sky. 2 Japanese transport bombers. 6-0 escorts. The American flight leader whispered through the radio. Lightning 1 to all aircraft. Let's go. The engagement. The P-38s climbed sharply. The Zeros never saw them coming. The Americans fired from long distance, farther than normal combat range, using the deadly 20mm shells. A Zero exploded before it even knew it was under attack. The second was hit while trying to climb. The third broke apart from a cannon burst. The Japanese bomber carrying Yamamoto attempted to dive, but a P-38 pilot named Rex Barber closed in. He fired a stream of 50 cals. Then one perfect 20mm shell. It smashed straight into the bomber's fuel tank. The aircraft burst into flames and fell into the jungle below. Japan's most important commander was dead, killed by a fighter they swore could never defeat a Zero. The shockwave through Japan. The Japanese high command was stunned. How had the Americans found Yamamoto, flown that far, arrived at the exact time, and killed his aircraft within seconds? The answer was finally clear. The P-38 Lightning was not a normal fighter. It was a long-range executioner. Japan urgently ordered new tactics. Zero pilots were told, do not approach head-on. Do not allow the P-38 to fire from distance. Do not stay straight and level. But on the battlefield, none of that mattered, because the P-38 didn't fight the way Japan expected. It hunted, silently, patiently, from distances no Zero pilot could counter. The weapon behind the fear. American pilots reported something extraordinary. At long range, the 20mm shell often hit before the Japanese pilots even saw the tracers. The shell traveled so fast, so straight, and so accurately, that Japan thought the Americans had created a new kind of cannon. One pilot wrote in his diary, "The Lightning's 20mm shell doesn't just hit them, it erases them." Another pilot described a Zero exploding from 1,800 feet away. I didn't dogfight him. I simply removed him. For Japanese aviators, this was terrifying. Everything they had trained for, turning, maneuvering, close-range combat, was suddenly useless. They could not escape something they could not see. The Lightning becomes Japan's worst nightmare. By late 1943, something had changed in the air. Japanese pilots, once fearless, once known for stunning bravery, were now entering battle with a new feeling: dread. The P-38 Lightning had become a ghost in the sky. A fighter that killed from distances they still considered impossible. And the secret behind this terror was always the same: that deadly 20mm shell in the Lightning's nose. The science of fear, why the shell was so deadly. The Zero was built like a racing plane. Fast, agile, but fragile. The P-38's explosive shell didn't just damage it, it annihilated it. Let's break down what Japanese pilots began calling the one-hit death. When the shell struck, the aluminum skin shattered, fire erupted instantly, the fuel tank vaporized, the cockpit blew open, the wing often snapped clean off. Japanese air veterans wrote in their journals, "We never saw the American plane that killed us. It was as if the sky itself fired at us. No maneuver can escape a weapon you cannot see." The fear was real, and it was spreading. A new American tactic, the long-range strike. American commanders noticed something. The P-38 wasn't just effective, it was unstoppable when used correctly. So they developed a new tactic. Boom from afar, break away, repeat. No turning, no circling, no dogfighting. It went like this: 1. Climb high. 2. Spot the Japanese formation. 3. Dive fast. 4. Fire from long range. 5. Let the 20mm shell do the killing. 6. Climb. away before the Zeros could react. This tactic was devastating. Example. In December 1943, over New Britain, a group of P-38s intercepted Japanese fighters. In the first 40 seconds, 8 Zeros were destroyed, 6 more were damaged, and not a single American fighter was lost. All thanks to long-range accuracy. The Japanese pilots never recovered from the shock. The shell that could break formations. Here's something most people don't know. The P-38's 20mm shell wasn't just killing aircraft. It was breaking entire formations. Japanese pilots flew tight for protection. But when one aircraft suddenly exploded, the shockwave and debris forced the others to scatter. Once the formation broke apart, each Zero lost mutual support. Each became isolated. Each became vulnerable to long-range fire. The Lightning pilots exploited this perfectly. One American pilot wrote, "Hit the lead plane and the rest fall apart like frightened birds." And it was true. A single carefully placed shell could disrupt an entire squadron. The rise of the P-38 aces. The Lightning didn't just perform well. It created legends. Pilots like Richard Bong, 40 kills. Tom McGuire, 38 kills. Charles McDonald, 27 kills. Thomas Lynch, 20 kills. Jay Robbins, 22 kills. These men became nightmares in Japanese war reports. Why? Because they used the 20mm shell like a sniper uses a rifle. Richard Bong described it best. At range, the cannon hits exactly where you want it. You fire once, and you watch the enemy disappear. The Japanese called P-38 aces. Hunters of the horizon. Pilots who killed from beyond reach. Beyond response, beyond understanding. When Japan realized the truth, late 1943, Japanese engineers finally recovered pieces of the deadly shell. They were stunned. The explosive compound was far stronger than anything in Japanese aircraft guns. The aerodynamic design was incredibly stable. The shell barely tumbled. It didn't lose accuracy. A Japanese metallurgical report concluded, "This shell gives the American fighter a killing range far superior to ours." Another note stated fearfully, "Engaging the P-38 at long distance is suicide." Japan's pilots already knew this. Now their engineers knew it too. The German Panthers were once the pride of the battlefield, invincible in armor and deadly in speed. But this secret, Allied shell changed everything, turning steel into fire and fear into reality. One hit, and the mighty Panther became a burning coffin. Why would never be the same. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden weapon of war, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories from the shadows of history. Share your thoughts below. Which weapon do you think truly changed the course of WWII? If you want, I can also write a ready-to-use full set, hook, outro, thumbnail, description, and keywords for the entire P-38 story too, just like this one.